All right, folks, if you've made it this far, it's Morgan of Murph and Morgan. You know that this will be our final Patreon episode for the month of December because we took December off to retool, rejuvenate, work on some things. But in the meantime, we wanted to leave you guys with some of the content we've done on Patreon, which you can find at patreon.com/Game of Crimes. And our final one we're going to do for you guys, it's our case of the month. Murph and I go back in time. We look at cases, most of the time cases we've done, and we look at cases that maybe some other people have done. And what we do is we go into, these are cases you probably have, a couple of them you've heard about, especially the ones Murph was on, but some of these are ones you've never heard about, but we dive into the details behind it. We tell you the stories of some of the cases and the things that we've worked on and how it affected us and what we did. So I always enjoy Case of the Month because it really gets into more of a deep dive, how investigations are done, what kind of things have to be done to clear a case.
Right. And as you'll hear, if you haven't listened to our other 3 Patreon episodes in the month of December, is we get a little more opinionated. Whereas when we're doing our regular interviews, we want the story from the guest. We don't want you to hear the story from us. We want you to hear from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So you may not agree with all our opinions, but hey, if you don't, let us know. And if you do, let us know. Let us know what you think about Patreon. And we ask you, if you enjoyed this, sign up for Patreon for 2023. We're going to have a lot more good content.
Don't wait till 2023. Sign up now. If you're listening to this now, you've had the entire month of December with free content. So, folks, sign up now. How to sign up now? Here's how to order. Patreon.com/Game of Crimes. Once more, that's Patreon.com/Game of Crimes. I tried to find out what the 800 number, if you dialed 800-Game of Crimes, what that would come up with. I don't know. I didn't want to dial it. So don't. But if you do dial it, folks, let us know what it is, right?
Yeah, and for regular episodes of Game of Crimes, we start up again on January 2nd, 2023. So come back. We've got some fantastic guests. We've already got their interviews done. They're ready to go. They've been edited. We're going to knock your socks off this year.
And the first one we're starting off with is one that made the national headlines, the national news, and we've got the officer that was smack dab in the middle of it with the real story of what happened. So if you want to know what that is, tune in on January 2nd, 2023. But in the meantime, share with your friends, tell everybody about patreon.com/Game of Crimes. And thank you guys once again for playing the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the final version for 2022 Game of Crimes. Welcome, dudes and dudettes, players and playerettes, and everybody in between, amigas, amigos. Welcome to the June 2022 in the year of our Lord. Kyrie, Domine, Danes, Requiem. This is Case of the Month, and as always, we try and find something we have a personal relationship to, but this one definitely is, because this comes from where I used to work as a state trooper and a detective, and this is going to be a hell of a case. Murph's already looking at it, right, Murph? So this guy was not a fine, upstanding member of society.
And by the way, hi, y'all.
Yeah, howdy.
That's how you say it in the South. Hi, y'all.
Hi, y'all. And there's y'all and all y'all, as we've determined, right?
No, it's just y'all. Y'all, that's all inclusive.
That's all. Well, how can you do singular then?
It's the same thing. Y'all is 1, it's 3, it's 5,000.
Yeah, I
make it easy. We don't try to complicate things down here.
Hey, but before we do get started, we want to say thank you, all of you folks listening in, because that means you're a player. That means you have decided to up your game and become a member of Patreon.com/Game of Crimes. That's us. That's where you find us. So we want to say thank you for being Patreon member for being a menu. I'll take the number 4.
He's going to cannibalize you guys.
No, we'll have to do one on cannibalism. No, I don't know any cases like that. But anyway, we just want to say thank you guys as always. You're what makes this fun. We get a lot of comments from you folks when we put stuff out, and this one is a bad case. I mean, because this is a bad dude. And here's the bad thing about it: I know everybody involved in this case, at least from the Garden City side. I knew the killer. I knew the killer's father. I knew the clerks. I knew all the cops. So this one's kind of personal for me. But this guy, if there's anybody who deserves Old Sparky, it's this guy.
Sounds to me like you're part of a conspiracy here. You know all these people. Maybe we should be looking at you in the lineup.
Well, to be part of a conspiracy, you have to take an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy with 2 or more people, one who is not a law enforcement agent.
Well, I think you just admitted
No, I just described what a conspiracy was, and I said I'm not in it.
You admitted your complicity and the knowledge of these people and what they've done. And how would you have that information?
Hello, if anybody's listening, I withdrew from the conspiracy years ago. So,
hey, I just want to say too to all our listeners, thank you very much for coming on here, because this is the only reason we do this is because of the comments we get back from you. We enjoy doing it. We hope you're enjoying what you're hearing here. It seems like you do, because you keep coming back. But don't hesitate to give us your comments and let us know your thoughts, because we actually do take that very serious. We don't take much serious. We certainly don't take ourselves serious, but we do take serious what you say. So,
but we do take this serious, absolutely. And this is a serious case. I mean, make no doubt about it. We might have a little fun, but this was a tough one. And let me kind of set the stage too. So this is in July of 1989. And as with Kansas, Southwest Kansas, things are kind of hot. You know, it's not exactly the Garden State like New Jersey. The wind blows. It's still a little warm, during the evening. And so, and here's the other thing too. Not only do I know all of these folks, I knew the clerks, not knew them well, but knew of them, because when you work midnights or you work late shifts and stuff, you go in, stopping in a convenience store, getting something to drink, grabbing a quick snack or whatever. That's something you always do. So this is something you would run across both of these folks, on a previous time. But what this got started was on July 19th at about 1:10 in the morning. The law enforcement center, the police department, gets a call from a guy that says, "Hey, I was just in the Dart Inn." And it's called a place called the Dart Inn, and it's 3rd and Kansas. The exact addresses won't mean much to you folks, but they will in relation to what we talk about later. But so it's about 1:00 in the morning, or just a little after midnight, I should say. And they call in, they say, "Hey, I was just there. There's nobody there." So they send an officer there, and what do they find? There's nobody there. I believe the grocery or the cash register was open. It looks like probably money was missing, but they search the store, they look for stuff, and they don't find anything. So, obviously this sets off red flags, because you've got somebody missing. Now, one of the things you have to account for, you have to think about, is one of the first things you do is there's a lot of ways you can go with this, but when you do an investigation, the other thing, you start with the circle. It's when we talked about the John Bonet case. You look at that circle, you eliminate everybody that's within that inner circle, and then you work your way out. It's concentric rings of connectivity. And so one of the first things you want to do is, where's the husband? Is she married? Where's the significant other? And this first person, her name was Barbara Kokendorfer, 27 years old. They weren't sure how much money was taken, because they didn't have a count at that time, but they knew money was taken. And so the first thing you got to do is got to try and track down her husband, who worked at a beef packing plant. And so he would work the late shift. So she walked to work, because they only had one car between them, as is with young couples a lot of times. So that's one of their key things. The other thing you have to say, was she kidnapped? Was there something that happened?
Right.
So they're working that scene. And let me tell you, the one thing I used to kid about, especially when I supervised some of these guys later, you would have people that would just they would take 10 pages to write something you could write in 2 paragraphs.
Yeah.
You ever have one of those guys, Murph?
Oh, yeah. And I've been accused of that myself. Sometimes I do get a little wordy. Yeah. I have to go back and reread.
But the thing is too, is the one thing though that's nice is you have to be careful. And this is a pro tip to you folks that are in law enforcement or go out to law enforcement. You don't want to say too little and leave out details, which then a defense attorney at some point can exploit. But at the same time, if you put in way too much detail, they actually exploit that as well, because you make one little mistake, then they call into question any of the other things. Was this an error? Well, you made a mistake here. What about this? So it's one of those things. It has to be long enough to cover what you need to do, but it has to be short enough that it doesn't expose yourself to additional stuff. So
right.
People were pretty good. They say, this is how I approached the scene. This is what I did. And of course they put in there, like with this, one of the key things you do when you have a body missing, the first thing you do, you check the inside of the store, make sure nobody's there, wasn't taken in the back, which has happened with convenience store robberies. But once that's done, you back out, you don't touch anything, and then you secure that crime scene, because there's nothing else you can do at that point. You're waiting for the investigators to show up, the detectives. So you back out and you secure this crime scene. So they secured this crime scene. And so they're working this, and obviously they're looking at making notifications. And then guess what, Murph?
What?
About an hour later, get another call.
Yeah.
Another call, 911 call. And they said, hey, I'm over here at the Coastal Mart, which is at 1115 West Campbell. For you folks in Southwest Kansas, Garden City, you know where that is. Just walked in, and the clerk is missing here too. Well, now you had red flags before. Now this one is like, okay.
Oh, the alarm bells are going off now.
Well, and it's the other thing too. It starts helping you narrow down who your potential suspects might be, because even though you start off in those concentric rings, the minute you have two unrelated but related in a sense, but two women who are not related to each other, no apparent pattern, but they disappear and they're both from convenience stores, then you start going, okay, we may not be dealing with a family member. We may be dealing with an acquaintance or somebody who's unknown, an unsub. So you have to start thinking differently. So this one, they got the call at 3:45 in the morning. Well, on one of these, they know what time it was on the first one, Barbara Kokendorfer, because an officer had just cleared that location at 10 minutes after midnight after taking a shoplifting report. So he, in a sense, he may have been one of the last people to see her alive. And so at 1:20 is when the call came in. Now at 2:20, there was somebody actually the call came in at 3:45 for the next one. So they had just taken a shoplifting report. I'm sorry, on this one, they'd just taken a shoplifting report, finished about 2:20. Now, the thing that kind of made this worse is that this one was Mary Raines. She was the sister-in-law of another Garden City police officer.
Yeah. So for us, that's family.
Yeah, that's family. So now, so what they got is that they got a call from somebody that said, "Hey, I was just in there a little bit ago. There's nobody there." I don't know why he walked to where he did. It wasn't like he just went around the corner and used a payphone. But so then you start wondering, hey, is this guy involved? Why does he wait? So basically, it's not that everybody's a suspect, but you need to start eliminating people from suspicion.
Right.
And anybody who's got a connection to the case, you got to start drilling it down. So,
well, think about this more. You said that a police officer had just been there just a short time earlier taking a shoplifting complaint. I mean, there's a suspect right there, because is somebody getting back for retaliation because you called the cops on them?
Yeah, I mean, who are you to snitch on me, man? I'm going to come back and get you. And maybe did I do the same thing at another store? So the thing you start thinking about is exactly that. Murph, you start thinking, well, that shoplifter. Do we have a description? Do they match the shoplifter? Do they match the description of somebody who may have been in the other store? Mm-hmm. So we start looking at all of these different things. And I was telling Murph right before we got on here, trying to pull some details out, but it is 766 pages in this PDF file. It's so big, it takes a while. Even on my big, awesome Mac, it takes a while. I'm wondering
why you didn't read the whole damn thing before we got on here. What's wrong?
I did. I read a lot of it. And what I was trying to do is pull up some of the, because there's actually some things now that we talk about now that become very important later in terms of who is the suspect, what were they driving? Because now we start looking for, okay, do we have a description of somebody? Do we start getting some preliminary descriptions? Do we have a vehicle description? So they start getting all of these different things that are coming in. And let me tell you, now that you've got two women missing, you've got a command post set up. The KBI, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, has been called in. The Kansas Highway Patrol, my fellers at that time got called in because they have aircraft and they need extra bodies, because we know we're going to have to start searching some things now. Well, they start doing those things, and then Steve, all of this stuff is in motion. And then,
here's one thing that makes that important as well to get the KHP guys on board there, is because you've got a killer on the loose. The troopers are primarily running the interstates and the main highways, and if this guy, if he happens to get in a hurry and takes off speeding, one of the most dangerous things you can do is pull a car over, because you don't know what you're getting into most times. And he could just walk up there innocently, pulling somebody over for going 10 miles over the speed limit, and this guy pops him with a .25 caliber, just like he did these others. So that's the significance of getting the word out to all the police officers, just to beware. There's a murder amongst our midst somewhere.
There is, and that's the other thing too, is that, and you want to start putting it out to the other areas, because you want people to know is that, hey, we've just had this happen here. So they do send out a teletype, and they send it out pretty much statewide, and they basically say, hey, look, if you've had these things, we've had, and I'll tell you about that later, because that comes a little bit later. But the one interesting thing that happens, though, Murph, during this time, they get a call from down in Oklahoma that says, hey, we just arrested 2 juveniles in a stolen vehicle that was reported out of your jurisdiction, a stolen truck, and this location in Oklahoma is only an hour and a half from Garden City. So you're going, well,
wow. Could be.
Could be, I mean, so now guess what? You have to spin up another set of resources. You work with them to find out what that is. So everything basically starts at about 1:20 in the morning. Well, at 9:20 in the morning, 9:21, a gentleman is out driving down the road on a road they called Tennis Road. So we had some funny names for roads. We had like 5 Mile Road, 6 Mile Road, because they were 5 miles north of town, 6 miles north of town, 9 Mile Road. Well, Tennis Road was about 13 miles north of the city limits of Garden City, about 13 miles north of where both of these convenience stores were located. And so he's driving down the road, and he calls the LEC, says, "Hey, we need a deputy out here." He says he thought there was a dead woman. He'd observed the body for a few seconds and could not detect any breathing. He said the body was located on Tennis Road, 1/2 of a mile east of Jenny Barker Road. So Jenny Barker Road, US 83, by the way, US 83 is the only north-south unbroken highway in the United States. It's the only one that connects from Mexico all the way up to Canada. So US 83 is the main one that runs through Garden City. By the way, Steve, if you remember out here, remember 50 Highway out here? Yeah, well, 50 Highway runs through Garden City too. So it's 50 Highway actually goes, it becomes 400, but it's 50 Highway out in Garden. So if you got on 50, you stayed on that, Steve, you could be out in Garden City, Kansas with me.
I wonder if it's as big a pain in the ass out in Garden City as it was in Northern Virginia.
Well, not as much traffic, but you know what we had out there too that Virginia doesn't have on there? Cattle trucks. Tons and tons of cattle trucks with cattle that crap and piss and do all sorts of stuff. But anyway, that kind of takes away. But anyway, so US 83, so Jenny Barker Road is 3 miles east of US 83. So if you're on Tennis Road, you go north of Garden City 13 miles, go east on Tennis Road 3 miles, about 3.5 miles east. And then that's Jenny Barker is 3 miles east. Jenny Barker is a north-south road. And then the body was found a half mile east at 9:20. Well, they get up there, and that is what they call the first crime scene now. So the first crime scene is actually Mary Raines. And when they look there, it's very clear she's got a bullet to the back of her head is what it looks like. And they've got shell casings. She's laying face down. So this becomes important too, because you start looking at how does this person commit their executions? And so the first one is face down, bullet to the back of the head. So now,
and I think I read that on her, she was completely nude.
No, that's going to be the second one.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, because that actually gets back into something about why they did what they did. So the first one is Mary Raines is the first one found there at 9:20 in the morning. So at this point now you've got an idea. You go, okay, we need to search Jenny Barker and we need to search Tennis Road. We need to start getting people out there. And that's when the more highway patrol people are called in. I know far away is Dodge City. So an hour away, they're pulling in troops from all over the place, additional sheriff's officers. And so as they're doing this at about just a couple minutes after 12. And it's actually, when I got on the state patrol, my training officer was Wes Wheeler, K382. So Wes is driving down Tennis Road, and he discovers the second body. And that is Barbara Kokendorfer. And she's the one found nude, but laying face down in the ditch, bullet hole, basically what appears to be a wound to the back of the head as well.
And they eventually find shell casings, is that right?
Yep, they do. And they determine that they're 25 caliber shell casings, which now you start looking at matches the shell casings from the first one. And what does that start telling you about the killer? They don't care.
Yeah, because most of them will police up their brass, because it makes it harder to conduct the investigation. It's just things that tie incidents together.
Yeah, so they're out there searching, and obviously now they find this, so now they spin up a whole nother part of the investigation, and now there's a lot more things going on. Well, what is interesting about that too is in one of the reports, and I'm going to see if this thing doesn't lock up on me here.
Let's hope not.
I'll pull it up here, but anyway, I started going through this, and there's some things early on that you say, okay, do we have something here now that ties back in? To the scene later, and we do. And so one of the reports they got is actually Wes Wheeler, again, my former training officer, but K382 is my shift partner sometimes. They're stopping people, they're talking to people, and as they do these, basically, it's not a roadblock, but you bring people in, you say, hey, were you in this area, whatever. This guy says, yeah,
I was driving up the road, up Highway 83, and I see this tan Plymouth Volare, lights out, parked on the road facing east. And so they get this information, and a lot of people say, well, how does he know it's a tan Plymouth Volare? Well, the guy who saw it works for an automobile parts dealer. This guy deals in automobiles day in and day out. He knows vehicles inside and out.
Not unusual.
Not unusual. So they start getting that information. So now, I will tell you, and obviously the news starts getting hold of this. So now we've got a clerk kidnapped from the Dart Inn. We've got a clerk kidnapped from the Coastal Mart. You start thinking, okay, the other thing you have to account for, you start accounting for at that time is, all the other convenience stores. Is everybody okay? So there's a massive effort to check, make sure. They start getting reports in from other counties and other places saying, hey, we've got this report of suspicious activity. We've got some things here that you guys might be interested in. So they start running down a bunch of leads. I mean, and really and the bad part about it, Steve, I hate to say the bad part because you want leads to come in. But one of the major considerations you have when stuff like this comes in is you've got to make priorities in terms of what is it we follow up first. What do we do? Obviously, notification of family, finding out their whereabouts, because the other thing you want to do is trace their movements. Can you account for your movements? Where were you? Where have you been? They've got to locate other family. You start developing some initial suspects, you think. And I always hated that word. How do you know they're a suspect? Because the danger is that the minute you start labeling somebody a suspect right away before you have enough information, like if you've got DNA and you've got fingerprints, okay, now we can elevate them. And I don't like this person of interest too. But you've got people, again, have we included them or excluded them from the list of people who may be involved in this crime? I don't always hate to say, well, he's a possible suspect. Well, half the town is a possible suspect.
Absolutely. Everybody that was awake during that time is a possible suspect. And it's, when you're dealing with family members of a murdered victim, I mean, it takes true finesse and professionalism to deal with them, to talk to them, because most of them are innocent, and they've just gone through this traumatic event where they've lost a family member, not just passed away, but to a very violent crime. It takes, you just don't walk in and say, come on, we're going to go talk. You've got to show a lot of compassion, and it's an art that you develop through experience, to be quite honest with you.
And having had to make those notifications and talk, in fact, one of the cases we did, the case of 1A the gentleman who was run over 8 times with his own car by the gangbangers and stuff, having to go talk to those family members, and it's one of those, it's a tough thing. It's not like in the movies, as you know, Murph, with Narcos, it's like Hollywood likes to do things their way. But in real life, it's like, I used to approach them and say, look, this is going to be a tough conversation. I know it's going to hurt you, but this is how it's going to help us find out what happened. I need some information from you. And the reason I need it now is it's very time sensitive. You don't come back and say, well, we'll come back and talk to you in a couple of days. What if they've got the key piece of information that allows you to find the suspect? So there is a sense of urgency. And I would always say, look, this is going to be a tough conversation. You may resent me for it, but understand I'm doing this because we're committed to finding out not only what happened, but who did this. And this is why I need your help right now. And most of the time when you would explain it to them, and just, you don't want to be forceful, but you have to be, in a sense, persistent and say, we have to get this information right now. I'm not going to ask you a ton of stuff, but there's 3 key things I need to know. Is that okay with you? I need, and one of the things I would do too, Steve, it wasn't like you say, it's an art. It's always hard to turn down if I say, hey, Murph, come over here and mow my yard for me and water my grass and do this. You're going to go, hey, up yours, pal.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But if I say, hey, Murph, I need your help. And you go, what is it? You say, hey, look, I hurt my knee. I hurt my back. I can't do anything. Could you possibly help me out? You're getting to the same outcome. But if I just ordered you to do it, say, hey, just come over and do this, you're going to go, whatever, right?
Up yours.
Well, you say that most of the time anyway. And I'm not asking you to mow my yard.
I'm saying it with love, that, right?
Love. But that's what I'm saying. But the way you do it is you say, look, I need your help. And that sets the context. So I would tell the family members, look, I need your help. And when, in the case of 1A he was missing, we didn't even know where he was. And so we're talking to the family. I need your help. Do you know who we went out to meet with? Did you know who he talked to? Some of the key things they told us were very important in the case later. So in this one, they're going to have to go talk to them and find out what's going on. Well, they're talking to them, they're finding out family members. And then this thing is, as you can imagine, like I said, I was just going through a lot of the report. And let me tell you, Steve, I mean, there are so many things I'm looking at after about, well, especially after the second body is found, but after the first body is found and the number of people, then the number of people they had at the second body, I was trying to count up. At one time, there was probably 40 to 45 people between communications, the sheriff's office, the police department, the KBI, the highway patrol, probably at least 40 to 45 people actively working these things. And we're talking about a county that's only 35,000, maybe 60 people on the police department at that time, 30 people on the sheriff's office in terms of sworn or out on the road. So, I mean, you really need all the help you can get. So we had to work together because we had no other choice. The KBI needed our help because they might only have 2 or 3 agents that they could send anywhere because they're spread out among the state. Right. So, it's one of those things. It's all hands on deck,
Yep.
Kind of like when Kevin got shot, I mean, you probably had offers from other Fed agencies. People said, "Hey, what do you need? Can we help you?" Especially ATF guys. I think ATF guys are really
everybody stepped in. Everybody threw in. Not just the Feds, but the Miami-Dade, Miami PD. I mean, Metro-Dade. I'm sorry, and then Miami PD. Every agency in Southern Florida was ready and anxious to get involved.
Yeah. So that was the case here. So we're looking for a bunch of people, and I was going to pull up something here real quick too. I'll get it here. Finally, this thing is loading. I had some pages lined out to do this, but one of the other key things, though, they get to is they also start getting descriptions of somebody that they've seen. Now, they bring in one of our folks who was doing composites at that time. They do a couple composites. These people were later not related to this case. They find clothing in some areas, like out on the highway, not related to the case. But you're going to all these places because once something happens, something that was unimportant, now people are going, "Hey, I don't know if this is important or not." And let me tell you, Steve, I would rather have somebody do that and have us go out there and take a look at it than have them not report it at all and have it be a key piece of the case.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things was somebody saw and said, "Hey, just a couple miles north of town on 83, I saw some clothing in the ditch. Will you go out there?" It was a child's striped shirt or whatever, not related to this at all. But you had to go out there. You had to send a couple people to document things.
And doesn't it always make you wonder, how did a kid lose a shirt?
How do people? You see two sneakers out on the highway. How did these sneakers get here?
They're just there.
Magic sneakers. I will
tell you. It's like that everywhere. It's just, you always wonder, how in the world did that get there?
And I will tell you, what's interesting is going through this case file when you do stuff, because it's a homicide, I think sometimes they say, well, let's err on the side of caution. We'll just collect everything. We'll keep everything. So, I mean, I've got everything in here too. If I showed this to you, it's handwritten notes. They've got the legal pads, like what I made my notes on here. Everything is in there. They've got, by the way, I'm pretty proud. They made captains write reports. Normally captains delegate stuff. Well, hey, look, you show up, pal. It's like what I used to do with my crime scenes.
Yeah.
There's the perimeter. You step inside the perimeter, you're going on the crime scene log, and you're writing a report. Yep. Simple as that.
Yeah. Why do you need to be in there? What's the benefit that you're going to provide to this investigation by just walking in and looking at a dead body or a crime scene?
Yeah. Just because, I hate to say it too, but there are some cops too. They're tourists. They go, they're voyeurs.
Oh,
they want to see what's going on.
You know what? And I have to say, as a young cop, I was too. You didn't want to miss a thing. But you know what? That's why you have the senior officers there that just jerk your ass right back and say, "Boy, here's why you're not going to go in there. You could just wait."
Hey, Skippy. Now, I will tell you, one of the other things I was pretty impressed. Made sure that they were covering all the bases, and we did this. Kind of talked about it on the John Bonet case, is the importance of knowing what the temperatures were, because that factors into everything of decomposition of body. What's the ambient air? Because that, depending on when you find the body, you start getting an idea. Okay, when were they placed there? So they did go through, and I thought it was a little hotter, but now I've got the official report. So at midnight on July 19th, it was 63 degrees. It dipped down to 59 degrees by 6 o'clock, which is unusual for July in Kansas.
Good Lord, that's like up in Canada.
Yeah, Canada. Ooh, Canada. And then it got up to 85 degrees by 4 o'clock. So we actually had the Kansas State University experiment station out there because of agriculture and everything. I mean, we've got precise weather readings. So it was good that they took those precise weather readings. We knew what was going on. So the reason we're kind of laying this all out is that now, one of the things you start doing is you start sharing this information, you start getting it out. So one of the teletypes that was sent out before they had found the bodies, they'd sent it out to Kansas and the surrounding areas, which this becomes important later on the teletype. So they send the teletype out. And in fact, I'm going to pull that up here real quick. I think I can read it to you. Yeah. So here's the teletype that went out. And it went out before they had found the first body. But of course, we're wanting to get this out far and wide. So they go, in the early morning hours of July 19th, 1989, 2 convenience stores were robbed and the clerks abducted. The clerks were taken to an isolated area and murdered. Victim number 1, a 27-year-old white female, was found nude. Victim number 2, a 28-year-old white female, was found in the same general area and was missing her shoes and socks. Both deaths appear to be execution-style killings utilizing a .25 caliber semi-automatic pistol. Any agency investigating similar crimes is requested to contact the Garden City Police Department or Kansas Bureau of Investigation. So why is that important? Because
if you got serial murder.
In this case, we will talk about, again, like we did in a couple other things, we'll talk about the different types of killers as we did in Mark Comboy's episode. By the way, if you guys are listening now, Steve, what I finally had to do is I just had to delete those other episodes and just start all over again. And now it's successfully uploaded the way it should be.
And that's on Apple only, right?
That was the Apple only was the only problem. Fuck Apple. I like them, but by God, you bastards. Anyway, but look, it only happened one time in the last 50, probably 100 plus episodes we've uploaded. So not too bad. But the reason I say that is in Mark Comboy's case, they were spree killers. They were not serial killers because there wasn't a cooling off period, following the FBI definition. And it wasn't mass killing. All the killings happened in one place within basically the same time. So these things are happening. So the reason that's important is because then on July 20th, in Pampa, Texas, they have a homicide down there. An older gentleman, 62 years old, working at a 1 hour photo. This happened at 1 or 2:30 in the afternoon. He is found face down in 1 hour photo, shot. Guess what? In the back of the head, one time, laying face down. And guess what they find at the scene, Steve?
25 caliber casings.
25 caliber casing. And real quickly, as we're doing this in real time, I was going to get this earlier, but let's do this. Garden City, Kansas, and let's find out. Take a guess. How far is it, do you think, to Pampa, Texas?
It's 177 miles. It takes 2 hours and 52 minutes. I'm looking at it on my computer.
I just pulled it up to, yes, 2 hours and 52 minutes. And Steve, guess what it's on? What highway is it on?
83.
83 highway. So what do we have in common? There's a lot of things tied to 83 right now. So ties down to 83. Now, however, that's not the only place something happens. Pampa, Texas is where they have that. But then now on following up from that, while they're down in Pampa, Texas, one of the people from the police department and the KBI, they get notification from Ardmore, Oklahoma. 3 females were shot at a flower shop. Guess what? All lying on the floor, all face down, all shot in the back of the head, all 25 calibers.
That's horrible. That's just horrible.
You know what he is? He's I'm sorry, but this is somebody you start going, okay, why are they killing?
Yeah, good question. And I've already read ahead. I know what his dad attributes it to, but
yeah. Well, so the only thing is, so Ardmore, Oklahoma. If you guys are keeping score here, it's south of Oklahoma City and south and east of Pampa, Texas. But if you go on what's called 283, or basically, I-40. So you hit Pampa and you can hit takes you into Interstate 40 to Oklahoma City and then down to Ardmore. So you go to Pampa. Looks like he left Pampa, went down then to Ardmore and killed the other folks. So now what we have now is we've got 5 people killed in 3 different locations across 3 different states.
Over what time frame? How many days, dude?
Within 36 hours.
Jeez.
I mean, the killings start in Garden City basically right after midnight on July 19th. You've got the shootings and stuff in Ardmore and in Pampa, Texas on the 20th. So I'd say, within 36 hours is when at least these initial 5 killings had happened.
And not to jump too far ahead here, but do we have a suspected motive?
No, not at this point. I mean, at this point, yeah, we get some ideas later, but at this point, no, nobody knows what's going on. I mean, obviously, if it's robbery, it's money, right? So the first thing you start thinking, okay, why would somebody want to rob a convenience store, and why would they take money? Most people at that point feeding a drug habit.
Mm-hmm. And you're not going to get massive amounts of money. It's not like you're robbing a bank here. You're going to get, if you're lucky, you can get a couple $100.
Well, now, what is interesting is the tan Plymouth Volare pops up again in the description of vehicle seen at the scene, and the description of the person, about 5'8", 5'10", blonde hair, streaks of gold, or streaks, and then gold rimmed glasses, matches a description they got early on in the investigation, too, of a suspicious person that was seen. So now we start tying all these things together. But they don't have any information on this. In fact, they end up arresting the wrong person to begin with, a guy named Michael Green, because through a variety of things, right, that they say, hey, look, he was missing, a car was missing. One day people say things. It's like he was arrested for killing a lady named Gwen Miller on July 23rd. He was suspected of Kokendorfer and Raines, and he'd been identified by a photo lineup from one of the survivors of the Ardmore shooting. But within hours of his arrest, this is when this happens. Greg Braun is arrested in Mexico for the murder, another murder that he commits.
Right. So he was exonerated. And you know what? That's just as important as finding the real murderer, is ruling out those who are not responsible. Even though this guy is a murderer in his own right on a different case, I mean, that's our job. That's what you do as investigators, is you want to identify the correct person. You don't want to charge somebody with a crime that they didn't commit.
I do want to clarify something. I talked about the 3 people shot in Ardmore. Actually, only one died. The other 2 survived. Sorry, I misstated that. Yeah, they survived. But again, all were shot with a .25 caliber pistol. But now, 2 days later, in Springer, New Mexico, is when a lady named Geraldine Valdez, a convenience store, guess what? Another convenience store clerk in Springer, New Mexico, shot and killed with a .25 caliber pistol. So on Sunday, about the same time, they arrest this Michael Green for the murder of Gwen Miller. But then within hours of his arrest, Braun's arrested in New Mexico. So this time they do catch the guy. And the other thing too, he said when he was stopped, basically it's kind of like, well, gee, guess who you've got, and kind of what took you so long. But he implicated himself in the murder of Gwen Miller over in Ardmore. So now he's starting to tie, well, guess what? It doesn't take long. Now this is where things really spin up, because once you get that, and guess what you've got? You've got the same weapon. You've got the same shells. Even if you don't, the other thing too is, even if you are not able to extract the rounds out of the victims and do ballistics analysis that way, you can compare casings, and you compare casings to the weapon that's recovered, and you can make a match that way. So he is pulled all of this stuff is pulled together. So now we have homicides in Kansas, we have homicides in Oklahoma, we have homicides in Texas, and we have homicides in New Mexico. He is truly on a multi-state crime spree.
Yep.
Yeah. So then by August 3rd, what happens is, obviously there's enough information. Things are moving fairly fast now. So he's now charged with everything, with first-degree murder all over the place. But guess what, though? He's charged with capital murder in New Mexico, because they do have, Old Sparky or the Needle, whatever. Mm-hmm. But he pled guilty, but mentally ill. He's obviously trying to set up the stage now, like what you were talking about, Stephen. I know you pulled up some stuff. So yeah, now's kind of the time to talk about what his dad. By the way, his dad, Leland Braun, was a defense attorney in Garden City who I'd gone up against many times. I'm not going to say anything about him. He did what he did. He didn't stand out as the best defense attorney. He certainly wasn't the worst, but he made a living doing that. And we'd all of us had run-ins with Greg Braun before.
Yeah. So it's as you read ahead, now this kid he was enrolled in earning his criminal justice degree. I'm not sure that he earned it all the way, but he was studying criminal justice. But his father says that the use of illegal narcotics is what changed his son. You know what? And that's the sad thing, man. And we know now, based on the investigation, and hindsight's always 20/20. His issue was with cocaine, and that in those first 2 murders, I read somewhere where it was saying that he bought coke with the money he stole from the first robbery. Then he did the second robbery, snorted cocaine, and it gave him the thrill to want to kill again.
Yep.
So what the hell? Is that supposed to be an excuse?
Well, if he felt like he had to kill again, that wasn't that's not the effects of coke. It's you're just an evil son of a bitch. By the way, yeah, he was a graduate with a degree in criminal justice. Between Barbara Kokendorfer and Mary Raines, they had 8 children. So he just orphaned, or in a sense, just took 8 children, took the mothers away from 8 children. And like you said, yeah, he later told police that he had to kill again. So he also then the next day he's in Pampa. July 23rd, he kills Geraldine Valdez, shooting her twice in the head during a robbery. He was caught 40 minutes later, which they had enough with the gun still in his car. He goes, "You guys must be proud. You don't know what kind of famous criminal you caught."
So, talk about acceptance of responsibility and showing remorse. All he's doing is making a smart-ass statement.
Well, here's another statement that he made, too. Braun tells a deputy, he says, "It wasn't as good as shooting craps in Vegas, but it was all right."
Well, and this guy is actually, 28? Is that how old he was, I believe?
Yeah, 28.
Yeah, 28 years old. Oh, yeah, now read. He was a college graduate with a degree in criminal justice.
Yeah. But anyway, so now, guess what? Now we take a look at he was sentenced to death now in for the murder of Gwen Miller in Ardmore, Oklahoma. He got $80 from that, and an $80 flower shop robbery. He was also a customer was shot in the head and robbed of $600, and the bookkeeper was also shot. So anybody who was in the store, he just got shot. So.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, all 5 murder victims were found shot in the back of the head with a .25 caliber gun. And so this is what's amazing is that this. Let me tell you, anytime you cross state lines, it's tough. Anytime you cross multiple state lines, it gets even tougher. So they did. It's just a lot of great work by a lot of different agencies between Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and New Mexico to tie everything together, because then you kind of end up with one of those things that we ended up with Danny Rometta, with Mark Conboy, is who's got jurisdiction. Well, if possession is 9/10 of the law. If you have the suspect, you're going to try him. And so that's what New Mexico did. And so New Mexico's got him. They try him. Oklahoma also wants to do the same thing. They held, in fact, they wanted to try and get clemency for him. What he did was he pled no contest to the robbery and murder charges in Ardmore. And it was called a blind plea, which basically says there's no deal with the prosecutor, which he got, I guess, what he was looking for, because the judge said, "Okay, plea accepted, sentence you to death." What do Jimmy and James say? You sir may fuck off.
Yeah.
So hey, we sentence you to die. So, but his attorneys tried to file a motion to withdraw. They said, "No, can't do it, Skippy." Denied. And then they tried to file a motion for clemency. So the Oklahoma Parole Board held a clemency hearing for Greg Braun, and he was represented, by a couple guys. They tried to introduce mental illness, say he had borderline personality disorder, and was raised by his attorneys as an issue worthy of clemency. This is Oklahoma, 4-0, denied. You got a meeting with those old Sparkies since, but they said, Governor Keating, there had never been a vote. Well, there'd never been a vote in favor of clemency. So, it's not like you're going to get through this. So guess what? So, he is sentenced to death. And now everybody starts, there's no more trials and stuff. He actually pleads to a lot of this stuff. So, and in fact, in Kansas, he is sentenced, which is good. He is sentenced to consecutive terms. And what it meant was that even if he got out or for some reason was able to avoid being convicted in the other states, he would have to serve 100 years before he would have been eligible for parole. So he's basically going to die in prison. So this guy is not getting out. So, but here's the other thing too that comes into it. Now, when it comes down to kill this guy, they're going to execute him. There is some debate between some of the family members about whether or not they want to show up or not. But I think there are some people. One of the victims doesn't want to see the execution of Braun, who killed her husband, Pete Spurrier, Eldon Spurrier, the 63-year-old man down at the 1 Hour Photo Mart there in Pampa, Texas. She didn't want to see the execution. She just wants it over with. The son of Eldon Spurrier, Bill Spurrier, said, "Hey, I'll attend." He said, but it does invoke. I'm reading a couple of these things. There's news articles and stuff. Yeah, it has painful memories. So here's what happens: all the family members stayed in touch. A lot of the victims' families said they would be there at the execution. So 39 family members of Braun's 5 murder victims. So 39 family members of all the victims came to witness the execution, but they're only able to bring 12 of them inside the death chamber. So the remaining 27 they watch from outdoor closed circuit television. And so for some people, they say, yeah, it brought a sense of justice, but it doesn't. I mean, I like the one son that said that. He said, Bill Spurrier, he says, "Hey, look, for me," he says, brought a sense of justice to Spill. He says, "I've been asked several times whether I felt that watching the execution would be revenge for me. My answer is, after 11 years, there is no revenge. That is justice." And I think that's what people wanted. They wanted, where is the justice? So he was pronounced dead at 12:17 a.m. in McAlester, Oklahoma, at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary. So they brought him back to Oklahoma, and that's where he got it. He was executed July 20th, 2000. And think about that, July 20th. So basically, it took 11 years. This one is only 11 years.
But that's still a long time.
Still a long time. But that was Danny Rometta, too. Danny Rometta was 11 years.
Yeah, think of the ordeal the families are going through. Every time something comes out in the newspaper or you get a call from the victim witness coordinator at the prosecutor's office, you're reliving this all the way, over and over and over again. And to continue just a little bit further, what you were saying about Bill Spurrier's comment, he says, "I feel sorry for Braun's family, but they did get the opportunity to say goodbye, which I never got that opportunity. I had to say goodbye to my dad at the grave." And then he finishes up, said that when my son was born in Sicily, when I was stationed there, so he's out serving his country, my dad traveled all the way to Sicily to hold his grandson. He'll never have the chance to hold my grandson. I mean, this just rips at your freaking heart, the way it tears up families. And this guy's just a little smart ass. That's all he is.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, too, I think Braun was rolling the dice. He thought, because guess what? See, Kansas didn't have the death penalty at that point. So he pled, but he got life in prison. New Mexico, he avoided capital punishment, took a plea deal, and they sentenced him to life. So he's thinking, hey, I'll go to Oklahoma and, hey, I'll just plead guilty and they'll give me life in prison, too. And that's where this train ride ended for Greg Braun, because they said, nope. Yeah. We sentence you to die. So he was put to death by lethal injection. And Braun actually asked that none of his family members witness the execution. So, Yeah,
well, here's the other thing. He got to say goodbye to his family.
Yeah.
The victims' families didn't get to say goodbye to their family members. I don't want to get up on my soapbox, but this stuff just really pisses you off, the way that these convicted murderers, get treated. Ugh.
Yeah. So, and what happened was, like I said, he was all these suspects, but he pled guilty to mentally ill and everything. So, so what happened in September of 91, and this is just basically a couple years after that, he was sentenced to life in prison for the murder after they couldn't reach a consensus on the sentencing. This is in New Mexico. So this is why he did go to trial there. I take that back. He went to trial in New Mexico, but they found him guilty, but couldn't reach consensus on the death penalty. So then you're automatically sentenced to life. But he was doing life. Braun would have to serve a minimum of 36 and a half years behind bars for the murder and robbery before being eligible for parole. Sentenced to 4 life sentences and 2 sentences of 15 years to life for murder robberies in Kansas. The court ruled that these sentences must be served consecutively, meaning Braun would have to live past 100 to be eligible for parole. So now, 2 years later after that, he pleads no contest to the robbery and murder charges in Oklahoma. So really, when you think about it, from 93 until 2000, that's only 7 years. That is pretty fast for a death penalty case.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And not to beat a dead horse, but I got to tell you, one of the surviving members, Dusty Miller, he says, he can't understand how somebody could go in. His wife was such a sweet-natured person. I don't understand how he, being Braun, could meet somebody like Gwen and still make a decision that the world didn't need her anymore. And then it goes on a little bit farther where he says, and we took these same vows when we got married 100 years ago, that he wanted to be honoring the wedding vows he'd made to her for the final time. I took an oath to love, honor, protect my wife. I wasn't allowed to do that. Greg Braun took that away from me, making sure he pays for what he did. It's the last thing I can do to honor those vows. And then this is what really ticks me off when I read this. Dusty Miller doesn't expect to hear apologies or words of remorse from Braun. This was before his execution. I haven't heard from him in 11 years. He could sit and write letters to others, but not to us, because he's wanting his little fame because he thinks he's some hot shit because he went out and killed a bunch of people. Some say he has expressed remorse, but every time he's had an opportunity to say something publicly, he had used it as a wisecrack. At one point, he told a reporter, "Tell your editor, thanks for the publicity." That's just like a slap in the face. And this is Mr. Miller talking. At this point, I don't care. I don't need him to tell me he's sorry now. And that was prior to his execution. Well, but he's sorry now because he ain't around anymore. That just, your heart goes out to the families. I'm sorry.
I want to read you something from a guy. This is a reporter actually where I used to live at in Salina. I mean, I knew of him. I'd read a couple columns. I don't know the guy, but he wrote for the Salina Journal, and he wrote an article after the execution of Greg Braun. And I just want to read the first couple sentences because I think this guy is fucking tone deaf. I get it if you're opposed to the capital punishment. But he writes, just the first quick couple paragraphs. Now that he has dragged others into hell, it is early yet. Greg Francis Braun only died at 17 minutes past midnight Thursday morning at the hands of the state of Oklahoma. But so far, there have been no reports that any of the people he killed 11 years ago, a crime spree that spanned 4 states and took 5 lives, have returned to the land of the living. You're a fucking moron. There is evidence, however, that the survivors of some of Braun's victims, cruelly misled by cravenly opportunistic politicians, did get to taste of the hell known only to those who wish the death of others. You're fucking implicating the victims of the families of victims killed by this guy, and now you're saying that they're craven, that they're misled, that they only want to taste the death that was only known by Greg Braun, who killed others, and you're putting them in the same. Right. You're creating this moral relativism that somehow they're as bad as Greg Braun is.
Hey, jackass, how would you feel if that was your wife, if that was your daughter, any of your family members that were the victims? You think you'd say that then?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I read another article that talked about it's not even worth mentioning. It was so outrageous, the things that this, I can't even call him a person, that he was saying about the victims' families, and the states and the investigators and the government was all wrong, because they put this guy to death. It's okay to kill those 5 people. Nothing wrong with that. Jerks. I said, we've got some sick people in this world.
Yeah. Well, when you read like some of the court stuff, like I said, I mean, I've got over 700 pages of stuff, and then you read the decisions and stuff. If people only knew how much effort goes into this stuff, I mean, I think you would be proud if you realized the cost to society of a single homicide. They estimate can be as high as $1 million just to handle a simple, homicide. There's nothing simple about homicide, but in terms of it's not a really complex case. You handle the cost to society when you think the police time, the court time, the prosecution time. Most of the time they don't have a lawyer, so they get a lawyer represented by the state. Indigent defense. So I mean, it's about $1 million. So there is a lot that goes into this, and.
You're not kidding. I'm just reading more and more here, and it's just getting me a little more and more upset.
Yeah. Well, so Braun tried to file a petition to have, the sentence changed in. So they filed this response back. So what it was is the Braun petitioned against the state of Oklahoma. And he's trying to, in a sense, withdraw his plea and try to change things that happened. And they said, here's one of the exchanges between him and the prosecutor's question concerning the sentence received. And it's basically a section that says, more telling is the petitioner's response to the prosecutor's question concerning the sentence received. During cross-examination, the following exchange occurred. Question: did I hear you just telling Judge Walker that he imposed a life sentence without parole sentence? You wouldn't be up here today asking to withdraw? Answer: no, sir. I'd be back in Santa Fe. That's Greg Braun saying he wanted to go, but they tried to get him extradited back to New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So your basic burr is the sentence you got. Answer: yes. Well, yes. And question: yes or no? The basic: yes. That is the basic. He's just saying, it wasn't fair. You sentencing me to death. I wanted you to sentence me to life so I could go back to New Mexico. It's like, no, you don't get to withdraw your plea based on the fact you didn't like what the plea was. You were told in a blind plea the judge can do whatever they want. There is no plea deal on the table.
Right. And you pled guilty to it. You admitted the evidence is overwhelming against you, but you openly admitted to investigators as well as the court that you committed those murders. Now, it's not like one of those cases where maybe it's circumstantial evidence that gets someone convicted of a murder and it's still, just a little bit questionable. This guy's straight up admitting to the murders. And then our judicial system, we're so careful when it comes to these things that it takes 11 years to get him to finally meet his final judgment.
I tell you, some of this stuff. So in this petition his lawyers filed, Steve, you're going to laugh at this next one. So here's one of his assertions. Petitioner next argues that there was insufficient evidence to support the court's finding there existed a probability that the defendant would commit criminal acts of violence that would constitute a continuing threat to society. Petitioner acknowledges the murder not only in Oklahoma, but also 2 in Kansas and 1 in New Mexico. He argues his 4 life sentences, together with the additional consecutive 30 years in Kansas, which will run consecutive not only to the life sentence in New Mexico, but together preclude the possibility of his ever being a threat to the citizens of Oklahoma. Dude, you were already a threat to the citizens of Oklahoma. You killed 1, wounded 2. You tried to kill the other 2. So I like I like the way the courts kind of say, they don't say you're smoking crack. They basically say, in light of our holding, we need not address petitioner's third sub-proposition that there is insufficient evidence in aggravation to survive reviewing. This proposition is without merit. They say it on every single finding. This proposition is without merit. This proposition is without merit. Oh, this one is good. We do so again. The 5th proposition is wholly without merit. It's like, we're getting pretty fucking tired of this. So, dude, just time for you to go take the needle and let's get this over with.
Yeah, I did it. I committed those murders. Oh, wait. No.
Wait a minute. The death penalty?
I didn't mean I really did it. Just and we're getting a little flippant now, and I don't like that because of the victims here. Our hearts go out to you, your families. So sorry this happened to you or to anybody else because of one person's inability to deal with life, who thinks taking illegal narcotics is the answer to everything. Yeah, let's legalize
or an
that
excuse
shit.
For everything.
Here's another argument not to legalize cocaine. Washington and Oregon. For you hardworking, honest people out there, I feel so sorry for the environment that you're having to live in out there. Here's a guy. He said he snorted coke and then that felt the need to murder again.
Yeah.
Well, let's not legalize it, okay?
I'll tell you what, though. Anyway, we're just right about at the end. But again, we weren't trying to be flippant because of this. But I think what we were, it's expressing the frustration is that if, so much effort goes into this, but then for you folks that might think that, hey, this, do we have a perfect system of justice? Absolutely not.
No.
Things happen all the time. We don't. But I think we have the best system of justice in the world, because if you looked at the amount of time, that effort that went into making sure that he got a fair trial, all of his issues were reviewed by the court, by an appellate court. He went to a clemency board. You've got all 4 different states involved. If you thought my little Adobe PDF file over here of 760 pages was killing a forest, if you saw the amount of paperwork that goes into the trial, the court transcripts, the lawyers' briefs, the Supreme Court, even dealing with a death penalty case, I mean, if you would put into a room, print out all these things and put them in, the banker's boxes, and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you could fill a 10 by 10 room, a storage shed easily
Easily.
Maybe 2 of them with all the paperwork that went into this. So, you know, are there mistakes made? Yeah, but guess what? Not in this case. Because not only did he admit to them, they had evidence that tied him to all of them. And one of the most depraved ways you can do it is that you take them out. I mean, can you imagine what is going through the last thoughts that Barbara Kokendorfer and Mary Raines are having right before they're shot in the back of the head?
Sheer terror. Sheer terror. For something they haven't even done wrong. They're just trying to get along in life, support their families.
Well, I will tell victims. Yeah, so I wanted my hats off. I'll be going back in a couple weeks to Kansas, actually running into some of these folks that worked on this case. And it's just, you look back on it, one of the things I will tell you, it's kind of when I reviewed this, it kind of, besides the case too, one of the people at the sheriff's office at the time was a lieutenant by the name of Kent Newport, who went out, his first ride in a state patrol car was with me. And Kent, when he joined the patrol, was one of my buddies. He died in the line of duty, died during a chase with guys that they were chasing for burglaries and stuff. And his name, I went to when they put his name up on the wall. So you go back through this and you say, man, not only do I know the people, here's Kent, you know, here's these folks. So it was one of those things you read back through it, and there's no fun and there's no joy in doing this. But one of the reasons we talk about these cases, and this is why we don't talk about cases like this on the podcast. I will tell you this, we have a kind of a thing. We don't want to just make our show about reading cases or other people's cases. Just other cases and like, hey, we're reading this. We're not crime junkies. I get it. They got a large audience.
Yeah.
Small town murder, they got a large audience. Mm-hmm. We do things a little differently. But the reason we keep this on Patreon is in these cases that we've talked about, except for one, all of these cases between Murph and I, we have a personal relationship with the case. This is our work we're talking about. Like with you, that case you worked up in Greensboro. Obviously, we've talked about some of the stuff the Met team did, some of my cases. So, and this one, I didn't work on it. I wasn't involved in it, but I lived in the town. I knew the people. This was personal to me because this was my town.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So once again, let's take a deep breath, calm down. Time to get on with the rest of your day. But what an honor to have you give us an hour of your time to listen to us pontificate about a case and give you our opinions. And once again, please give us your feedback. We truly are interested in what you think about what we're putting on here.
And for you folks who are at the Guardian of the Realm and Warden of the Throne level, we have a special surprise for you this month in terms of the movies we're going to do. There is a tie-in to things that are going on and a tie-in to a guest we just finished interviewing this last week. By the time you hear this, you know, it'll be in June of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got a real mob guy. I mean, a real mob guy. And so the movies we're going to talk about for our monthly Narco Meter review, I think, Steve, when we looked at the list, they're all mob related, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And the kindly timely based on the actor that is involved in these movies.
So say no more. If you want to know. If you're not a member of Warden of the Throne or Guardian of the Realm level, now would be the time to join. But in the meantime, we want to thank you guys. Like I said, we so appreciate the fact that you support us, that you donate to us, and that you want to hear these cases. So we thank you, and we thank you once again for playing the biggest, baddest, and as you've seen, the most dangerous game of all, the game of crimes.